Pixar presents a comedy event
You look gorgeous.
that takes you to the edge of the universe and beyond.
10 seconds to self-destruct. You are now free to move around the cabin.
Disney Pixar's WALL-E. This film is rated.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cinemarcade. This is the podcast about movies and video games and those sparks that fly everywhere when you mash those two worlds together. I'm trying to make our tagline here clunkier, slower, and longer. I think that's my goal. One of my goals for 2024 is to be worse at everything.
That's good.
And I think I'm off to a really good start.
I've been doing that for years.
That's a beautiful goal.
I think
we
so.
should all aspire.
Well, here's the thing. Anytime I set a resolution for myself, I fail it inevitably. I can usually just okay, I put this on the list. That means I'm inevitably not going to do it. So if I say I'm going to get worse at everything I do, put it on the sheet, and then by year's end, we'll see how successful and wealthy I am.
I usually pick around 13 resolutions, and then I accomplish one.
Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad.
You know what? Honestly, I think that's a nice way to do it. You just get like a grab bag and you're like, look, I'll be happy if I do any of these dozen.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about that arbitrary point in the year where we're just like, oh, we're really going to kill it this year. Like, I've got all this momentum, and then, January 2nd, I'm done.
I think it's the fact that January has nothing to look forward to. So you're just like, you kind of just make shit up. You just make it up as it goes. So you're like, oh, I'll do this. I'll do this every day. I'll do yoga every day.
Absolutely. I will not run out of steam on any of this at all.
Well, I think the secret, though, so I've discovered in myself that I can do anything for 30 days. 30 days is like the number that I have enough focus to focus on.
Okay.
After that,
Wild West. Yeah. After that, it's a crapshoot.
Pew, 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 pew. But 30 days, I can get things locked down for 30 days.
Okay. All right.
I've done the 30-day yoga challenge like 4 or 5 years in a row.
Okay. I always think I'm going to do like NaNoWriMo or something like that, where you write a whole novel in a month, and then I inevitably never do it. But hey, maybe this is the year. Hope springs eternal. This is the podcast about movies and video games and the sparks that fly when those worlds collide. I went back and did it better that time.
Ooh.
That's right. My name is Steve Guntley. Who is joining me today?
I'm J-Ban.
Welcome. And who else is here?
Justin. I kind of thought we were already in there. I forgot we kind of skipped it.
Yeah, we kind of skipped it, another resolution. I'm going loosey-goosey this time.
Well,
anyway, that's the end of our show.
So much of this film is silent, so it's too bad that we can't just be quiet and just make just
make noises at each other, because the movie we are talking about, which we have not even said, we're talking about Disney and Pixar's WALL-E from 2008. Just an absolute gem, a delight of a movie that we actually, a rare thing for us, we all sat down at the same time and watched this movie together, which we never really have the time to do. So I'm glad that we found time to watch this one, just all in a group.
It helps.
Justin and I sprawled and usurped Steve's couch.
Yeah, it was you guys sprawled out with dogs flanking you, and then me and Ailish are on the floor it's okay, I'm fine. No, I was on the floor voluntarily, to be clear. My legs were really sore.
Look, you started it on a stool, and I was like, that's a bold commitment.
It's the commitment of a man who does not quite realize his body is in his 40s yet. I'm still kind of thinking I can sit
I love that. You're 40 in 2 weeks, and now you're like, I'm just gonna say in my 40s from now on.
I've been excited about it. I can say it now. I can say it officially. Yes, I'm in my 40s. I'm owning it. I'm deciding this is my decade. Much like Wall-E, who is in his 40s, and he decided this is his decade. I tied it all together.
I don't think
Seamless.
especially maybe like his 740s, but
Yeah, probably. He's got big divorced dad energy, right? Like that's
That'd be
his whole
funny.
deal.
I would love to see like a tiny, what's it called? A side quest of Wally like hanging out with vampires or something like that.
Oh my god, right? Yeah, like he's got to have had.
There's
some-
a couple of movies like about vampires at the end of the world.
Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah. Like he stumbles upon like an Omega Man situation, and it's just like suddenly he's king of the mutants. Like, I would love that. There's a lot of crossover. Like, here's Will Smith and his dog, and then there's Wall-E just rolling across the street. You know.
I mean, Wall-E was going for King of the Robots a little bit during the movie, but
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, he was definitely harvesting their corpses to keep himself alive.
okay.
so-
Well, after that though, he became the hero of the robots.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
they all
about
the
that.
rogue robots were like, "You're the leader now."
I would like okay, so before we get into the robots, because I have a lot to say about the robots.
Okay.
Let's start off with Wall-E. It starts off as a charming silent film.
This is one of my favorite. So we'll give some context because this is our first Pixar movie that we're talking about. We have so many Disney and Pixar movies coming up, and we've only covered Lilo and Stitch and this so far. So still many to look forward to. And I think I said the same thing on the Lilo and Stitch episode, where like these aren't necessarily the most exciting for me to cover, if only because A, I know the movies are generally going to be pretty good, and B, I know the games are generally going to be pretty good. Like, there's a quality control level going on with Disney and Pixar stuff that doesn't leave a lot of room for surprise. But I will say the game surprised me in a couple of interesting ways. which
Are
we'll
we
get
ever
to.
going to cover the Emperor's New Groove?
Yes, we are. I think there's a PS1 game. Yeah.
Because
yeah.
like the Emperor's New Groove, like the story behind the Emperor's New Groove and how it never had a script is just it's a wild story. Like
I don't know the story.
They actually have on YouTube. They have a behind the scenes movie that Disney refused to allow to be published.
Oh,
'cause
wow.
It shows what a clusterfuck the production of that movie was. So anyway, when we get to that, we'll definitely talk about that.
I'm definitely interested to get into that one. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of these, but I think this one surprised me in a lot of ways, and also it's never not a pleasure to revisit Wall-E. I think, you know, I was talking with Ailish off mic about our favorite Pixar movies and like which one would rank where, and this one tends to be in my top one or two. It's either this or Ratatouille, depending on which day you kind of hit me with it. Like, I don't know. Do you guys have a favorite?
I like Toy Story 2.
Good call. Very good call.
But I don't know. I know it's newer and maybe it's not as classic, but I fucking love Luca, and I cannot wait
Okay.
till it's like they're doing a Pixar release of the 3 movies that came out during the pandemic, and I
Yeah.
am 100% gonna watch Luca. And I've seen Luca maybe 4 or 5 times.
Interesting.
I love it so much.
I that's what I need to revisit because I watched it once, I liked it, but I never really went back to it. Onward didn't click for me. Turning Red, I loved. I watched Turning Red.
I didn't manage to watch Turning Red.
I've watched Turning Red like 4 times. You know, so of their recent output, that's probably my favorite. But this movie came out in an era when Pixar could kind of do no wrong. Like Pixar was sort of on an unbelievable hot streak. Like your opinion on Cars may vary, but like if Cars, the original Cars is like the weakest of your original crop of movies, you're still doing pretty good. I think nowadays it's a little less consistent. Like I watched Elemental. I thought it was confusing and annoying and just not a very good movie. You know, and they've been overly reliant on sequels the last couple of years, which has just been a little bit of a bummer.
Like, I can't believe they're doing a sequel to Inside Out. Like, I just don't think that...
Inside Out. Love Inside Out.
I did.
But
I really enjoyed Inside Out, but a sequel to Inside Out? But again, I love Toy Story 2, so...
That's the thing. Outside of the Toy Story movies, the sequels have not been terribly successful. I am the world's biggest defender of Monsters University, but I guess it's more of a prequel.
I haven't seen Monsters University.
I kind of love that movie. I'm going to defend that one all the way. Justin, do you have a favorite Pixar?
I'm gonna preface this by saying that I haven't seen many.
Okay.
My roommates have actually showed me a bunch of them in the last year. Cars 2 was fucking wild, though.
That is a wild cut. Generally considered the worst one in the entire Pixar canon. I love that you're going for it.
I liked it just because the amount of times I went, what the fuck?
We will be covering the entire Cars trilogy. I'm going to have a lot to
there's
say.
A third Cars?
There's
yes,
a third Cars.
I haven't seen
There's
it,
a third Cars.
but there is a third Cars.
I have weirdly played that video game. It was on the Wii U, and on my last show, we covered every single game on the Wii U. And that game is really good. Like, it's a surprisingly good kind of Mario Kart style racer.
But the thing
we'll get into all that. But yeah, Cars 2 is a bad shit movie.
It's like, let's go from a movie about car and racing and real kid friendly, and then let's go to a spy thriller where cars are dying.
Yeah, let's do
people explode.
James
Cars
Bond
explode. Yeah,
is the Larry the Cable Guy, and vice versa. That's the direction they went on this. But WALL-E, I think, still stands out as kind of a unique treasure in the entire catalog. And I think because of what we were talking about, how the first half of this movie is silent, the first half of this movie always felt like one of the Pixar shorts to me, and the Pixar shorts tend to be my favorite part of Pixar. Like, those tend to be my very favorite things. They're almost always silent.
So good.
It's a classical cartoon thing. I do think the second half of WALL-E is a little weaker than the first half of it, just because I love watching WALL-E interact with his world. I love kind of the ramshackle style of it, how much personality they're able to get out of this little box with little rotors in it. Like, pretty incredible. To give a little bit of context on this movie, it was released June 27th, 2008. It's directed and written by Andrew Stanton, and it stars Ben Burt, Elisa Knight, Jeff Garlin, Fred Willard, John Ratzenberger, Catherine Najimy, and Sigourney Weaver as the voice of the Axiom speaker, which I think is a nice choice. This is one of many, many projects that came about as part of what must be one of the most legendary mythical lunch meetings of all time. In 1994, a lot of Pixar executives got together. They were getting ready to release Toy Story, and they were trying to plot out the next couple of years of their studio. And over the course of this long lunch, they came up with the plots for A Bug's Life, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, and this movie, which was originally going to be called Trash Planet. I don't know if Trash Planet is better or not.
The analog to Treasure Planet?
That's the thing. I'm willing to bet. I am willing to bet, because Treasure Planet was a huge bomb. It's one of the biggest bombs Disney ever had. I'm willing to bet that they changed the name to distance itself
I
from
have
that.
to rewatch Treasure Planet, but I remember liking it.
I like that movie a lot.
And so, I don't know, sometimes things just don't work out.
Yeah, no, just bad box office does not equate a bad movie. I think Treasure Planet's quite good. But yeah, so Andrew Stanton was the one who pitched this idea, and it took a long time for them to kind of figure out how they were going to do it. But in the meantime, Stanton went on to direct A Bug's Life and Finding Nemo, which was the biggest hit the studio ever had at that time. So that was really, really big for him. He had a lot of juice going into this development. Now, the story changed quite a bit over the development. One version of this was weirdly going to be like a light, kind of kid-friendly horror movie almost, in the vein of Alien. Like, it was going to be about WALL-E defending Earth from alien invaders, even though there was no, like, human population anymore. It was just him on the planet. That was always an element. It was just going to be him alone on the planet. Then they kind of stumbled on the idea of incorporating humans into the story. And the original idea that they had, and at one, I got to be honest, I wish they kind of stuck with, was that the humans had devolved over hundreds of years to become kind of gelatinous alien creatures. And this is all based around like this theory that humans living long-term in zero-G environments would lose bone density and would become more and more gelatinous over time. I feel like that's almost a stronger way to do it than the way they went, which is, if I'm going to front load my criticism of this movie early on, I think the second half of this movie has a little bit of a fat phobia thing going on.
I think that's one of the hard, they're trying not to be fat phobic, but they are fat phobic. Like,
they do make a point to show that the characters' bones have reduced. Like, they are... Like, they're, yeah, so I mean, it is showing that it's more of a physiological change than just like a eating junk food kind of change, but it feels a little squicky, right? Yeah. I don't know.
Well, and especially because they have artificial gravity. So, like, the gravity would have helped their bone density. But I think it was an excuse to show lazy, large people eating excessively without exercise. And I thought that was kind of I feel like as we progress as a society, like, some things become tasteless, but I don't think it doesn't detract enough from the movie for me to be like,
no,
it raises an eyebrow, but it's just like, okay, whatever.
You could see that the intentions behind it were good, or at least like they're making a social commentary about how we're all stuck to our screens and everything like that. But again, I've been growing increasingly aware of the stereotype of like how fat people are treated in media, and it tends to be like equating it with laziness, and that's often not the case. You know, that's not the transition. There's 100 reasons to, you know, but it's not a movie with a whole lot of nuance in that degree. But I think the environmental message of this movie is pretty spot on. You know, the idea that Earth is now completely uninhabitable because of the horrible way we treated it and the way that we just handed over control of everything to major corporations. Like the president of Earth, who we see in this movie as a live action Fred Willard, is also the CEO of the biggest corporation on the planet. And everything's branded that. I feel like that kind of satirical stuff is much more pointed and successful than the weight stuff that's kind of later in the movie. But that's really kind of my only major quibble with the way this came out. The one other like thing contextually that I want to notice or mention before we get into the movie itself is this is one of the movies that kind of made the Academy Awards change their rules a little bit. All right, so in 2000, I'm an Oscar nerd, so I gotta always highlight this.
You are an Oscar nerd.
I absolutely am. In 2008, this movie got snubbed for a Best Picture nomination, as did The Dark Knight, as did a couple of other, like Iron Man, a couple of other big, like, populist movies that were critically well received, but they were kind of ignored. And instead of that, we got nominations for movies like The Reader, which is this really maudlin, like, Holocaust drama that nobody actually liked at the time. But it's just like, oh, well, you know, it's a World War II movie. We have to put it on. It's a Best Picture nominee. And there was such an outcry about the lack of this movie and The Dark Knight in the nominations that the very next year they expanded from 5 nominees for Best Picture to up to 10. And I think it's also telling that one of the movies nominated for Best Picture the following year is going to be Up. You know, so it's like, okay, we missed the boat on WALL-E. Let's get another Pixar movie in here to kind of make up for it. Up, I would say, not as good a movie as this. Good movie, not as good a movie.
The thing about Up is the first 5 minutes of it
are fucking devastating and perfect.
Is like beyond Oscar-winning short.
Yeah.
But the rest of the movie is just sort of like blah, you know. It's okay, but it's just like your whole mindset and your whole soul is stuck in those first 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And you're just right in, like, the movie is just like the biggest chaser to a shot, and you're just like,
it's really true. Yeah, it's like that's a great way to put it. It's like an hour and 40-minute chaser to an extremely potent and extremely well-made movie. I think we'll talk about Up. There is a game, so we will talk about it. But like that's a movie whose entire legacy is based in those first like 5 to 10 minutes. Whereas WALL-E, I think, is more successful consistently throughout.
So, didn't you do a Buster Keaton rewatch?
I did,
recently? Yeah. Like, how does so for me, like, one of the reasons I fell in love with WALL-E the first time, like, I watched it, was I loved how it made me feel like I was watching a silent movie.
Oh, 100%.
With the emotion and the face of WALL-E. So how does this compare to all the Buster Keaton you watched?
You can 100% see it because, you know, Buster Keaton, as people know, was called the Great Stone Face. His whole gimmick was that he never smiled, or he just had this one expression the entire time while he was doing all this wacky physical comedy. And he did it because he wanted to convey humor without relying on, like, mugging. You know, he wanted to use his body, he wanted to use the environment, his timing, things like that. And I think WALL-E is indebted to that kind of tradition. You know, he obviously gets to make noise, and he has a voice, and he has, you know, a little bit more of a dynamic facial expression than Buster Keaton does in those movies. But he is only a pair of eyes on a stalk, you know, like That's all he ever looks like. And it's amazing how much personality they're able to convey.
They get some miles out
They
of
really do.
a few feet of road.
Yeah.
Like it's so impressive how emotive and how well that translates.
Either one of you ever watched Short Circuit?
Yeah. Johnny
A long
Five.
time ago,
Johnny
yeah.
Five.
He's really,
alive.
you can tell there's a lot of Johnny Five in this design, and it's also really cool. Like the voice of Wally and the top billed actor in this movie is Ben Burt. All right. And for people who don't know who he is, he's not an actor. He is a sound designer. He's the guy who made the voice for R2-D2. He did all the sound effects for the whole Star Wars series. He's considered one of the best sound effects designers in the world, and I just love that he got to top line this major movie that was the 9th biggest box office draw of the year. That's pretty impressive.
Did he also work on the film as well, I'm assuming?
Yeah, he was the sound designer, and he got to be the voice of Wally and Mo, the little scrubby guy.
This movie just has incredible sound design.
Unbelievable. Yeah, next level. And I don't remember if this won the Oscar for that or not. I think it deserved it.
And I also loved so there's this we're all improvisers, and I used to do improvised tech. And I would use La Vie en Rose by Louis Armstrong to score so many scenes, because you're just you instantly go into this sort of beautiful, hopeful, romantic mood when you play La Vie en Rose. And Louis Armstrong's version is so beautiful. Edith Piaf's version is also extraordinary, but it's just it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the use of Hello Dolly and the music to Hello Dolly, just to making Wally just live. I mean, it's an argument for hard copy media.
That's my thing. This has been a thought that's haunted me for years, even before seeing this movie for the first time, is what happens if the whole world ends, human life is extinguished, and it's centuries from now, and an alien race comes down and discovers our planet and wants to learn about our culture. What if the only movie they can find is I don't know, Street Fighter the movie or something? And what's the one movie they're gonna find that is endemic and representative of our entire culture? And you always think it's going to be something super uplifting or something that really paints us in its best light. But it might just be a random, it might be Hello Dolly. It might be My Cousin Vinny. I don't know. We have no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah, because it's was Oedipus even a good play? At
Probably
the time,
not.
At the time,
Yeah.
I think it won the Dionysian Award that year. But still,
it won a Dionysi.
I don't remember what it's called. It's been a long time. But they used to have comedy plays compete, and they used to have tragedies compete, and but yeah, what we got down from Roman and ancient Greek. There's a lot of good stuff missing. That's true.
I've just always worried that one piece of media is going to exist and it's going to be something weird and mediocre, and we just have no control over that. But in Wally's case, he really seized on the 1970 version of Hello Dolly that has Barbra Streisand. We never see Barbra Streisand in this movie. But the clips from that play throughout the movie and the game, surprisingly, they did include the clips from that. But that just provides so much of the atmosphere and the flavor of the early parts of this movie.
And it gives Wally his, I'm using he's a robot. Their desire which is to hold hands.
Yeah. How fucking cute is that? This is a long quest across space so that a little robot can hold hands. No. It's so cute. I'll hold his hand. Come on.
I did, when we were about to start watching this movie, because I watched this for the first time a month or two ago with my roommates, and I came to the conclusion during the first half of the movie, and it was only solidified as the movie went on, Wally is a simp.
It's interesting that you say this. So when I first saw this movie, I saw it in theater, and I saw it with my brothers and my ex-fiance.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the boys in our party were in tears.
Oh, yeah.
And I was and I feel this movie really speaks to men. Do you guys have anything to say about that?
I don't know if I've ever felt like it spoke to me on a gender basis or anything like that. This is one of the few Pixar movies of this era that didn't make me expressly cry, but I do remember watching it and just being kind of awed and delighted by this movie the entire time.
It definitely got me very invested, but I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, this is like I considered Wall-E as more of like a child of like, Wall-E just wants like to hold somebody's hand and get a hug.
See,
and I'm like, that is great.
And there is something to that where men don't often admit that that's one of their core needs, but it 100% is. Like most of us are, the media portrays us in one way, and most of us are just like, I want to hold hands and have a hug. I want someone to give me a blankie,
Oh, man, honestly, that's the best.
Oh, yeah. Just give me a damn blankie.
But yeah, no, Wall-E is great. And is Wall-E the best simp of all time? I would say probably, because he's not that creepy.
That's the
a
thing.
little bit sometimes.
I immediately hear the word simp, and I think he's a creep. And I don't think Wall-E's a creep. I think he's a good
You do not
target.
have to be a creep if you're a simp.
Correct.
Though those are not necessarily follow after each other. And I would say that you cross over from simp to creep. You are no longer simping. You're creeping.
Okay.
So
That's
simp is, in my personal opinion and my personal dictionary, is a positive somebody who just adores somebody.
Okay. Yeah, all right, I can see it. I mean, he's definitely very devoted to this strong space mommy with some dommy kind of energy.
What is up? Why does she have a gun? Why?
She's to defend herself.
She has to protect herself against rogue robots.
Exactly. We don't know what kind of like post-apocalyptic situation is happening down here, Like it could be just a robot uprising. We don't know. But as we do know, Wall-E is the last functioning robot on Earth. He's basically the only thing like still mobile and
I don't think we
intelligent.
necessarily know that, but the assumption is there.
At least in his like general vicinity, it's Wall-E and a little cockroach that behaves like a puppy. It's very cute. But even still, like Wall-E, he's either gone weird from being alone for too long, or his circuitry was always a little wrong, because he does have hopes and dreams, and he wants things. He collects things. He's different from a lot of the other robots we see. We actually, weirdly, in the video game, we get a little peek at Wall-E life before everything fell apart, and we see that he is even weird, like even for that. If we're going to consider that canon, we're just seeing that he's weird.
I think that this kind of goes back to a common thing that I think Star Wars started with R2-D2.
Yeah.
Which is that robot, like it's the robot with a personality.
Yeah.
And in Star Wars, the methodology behind that, and the reason why they always tell. One of the reasons why they always tell Luke, Anakin, whoever, that R2-D2 needs his memory wipe is that in the Star Wars universe, the concept is, and I think it's even a similar concept in like Halo and stuff, where if an AI, even if it's like a programmed AI, is left for too long, errors start. Like it's the same thing where like sometimes if you have a program installed forever, something stops working and then you reinstall and it works again. But in Star Wars, they wipe the memories droids to basically reset the AI, or the droid's memory to reset the AI. And keep it from going rampant or from going self-aware and then like getting feelings and stuff. And Wall-E, I don't think, is getting appropriate maintenance anymore.
No. I mean,
it seemed to have stopped at some point.
This is a classic bit of sort of Darwinian science fiction, I guess you could call it. It's the same with like X-Men, it's like time and aberration brings it along the next generation, like that's kind of the idea. Like something has gone wrong, and over time that's going to like affect the history of everything. And that's what Wall-E is. He's got like some kind of aberration in his programming that makes him a sweet little boy. He's just a nice little guy.
To throw in there, just that something went wrong. It could be a good wrong.
It could be a good wrong.
Especially in this case where we end up with just like you said, a sweet little guy.
Listen, I assume most of the X-Men are going to come around and say, like, hey, we ended up okay. You know, I've got laser eyes and claws and stuff, and yeah.
Look, I feel like depending on the situation, some people got the short end of the stick on that one.
It's true.
And they would probably be fine with, like, hey, can we fix this? Because, like...
That's what the whole...
I accidentally murder people. I don't want to do that.
That's what the whole of Grant Morrison's new X-Men series, if I can be an X-Men dork for a second. The new X-Men series that Grant Morrison did is all about the X-Men who have useless powers, and they're kind of they're stuck in like the remedial class. It's great.
I just saw a meme like yesterday or the day before, and I've seen the meme before, and it's like I don't have a good recollection of the X-Men movies, but it's like Storm, somebody is saying like, oh, you know, there's something wrong with us, and Storm's going, no, we're perfect the way we are, or whatever. Yeah. And then they're just like, she said the person who just makes clouds when they want to the person who accidentally murders people because they can't control their power.
Exactly. And I'm like, yeah, Rogue has a tough road to go. Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to, if possible, give them a hug and say, we're going to figure this out.
Exactly.
Or don't give Rogue a hug.
Yeah.
Look, I don't remember what happens when you give Rogue a hug.
She sucks your life energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if she does that to a mutant, she gets their powers for a short
Give
period.
her an air high five or an air hug.
Yeah.
Text hug emojis.
Yeah.
And then say,
Did you
let's figure something out for you.
The Pie Shop show.
What?
Pushing Daisies. Yeah. I was Pushing Daisies. Yeah.
That was a show that I remember seeing the ads for and wanting to watch it, but then I just...
charming.
It's so cute, and it has one of the hardest to explain like premises of any show. It's like, okay, this guy cooks pies. He can bring people back from the dead by touching them. If he touches them a second time, they die forever. He solves crimes.
And there's a woman that he brought back from the dead, and he falls in love with her, and they can't kiss, so they like kiss through saran wrap.
Yeah. So they have like permanent, like irresolvable sexual chemistry that they can't ever act upon. Hard to define show, but it's interesting.
Lee Pace is the star of that, and
I love Lee Pace.
Lee Pace is amazing.
He's amazing.
I can't believe I don't have Apple TV. Otherwise, I'd watch that show that he's in. Expanse or not Expanse?
Foundation. He's in Foundation. Yeah. Halt and Catch Fire, one of my favorite shows of all time, starring Lee Pace.
I love The Fall.
The Fall is so good. The Fall is so underrated. Nobody's seen that movie.
No one's seen that movie, and it's like
so
one of the best movies of all time. It's like my top 5 favorite movies of all time.
I've seen none of this.
See, exactly.
I don't know what any. I know of Pushing Daisies. I've heard of Halt and Catch Fire.
Yeah, the Fall got no press when that came out. Like, it's almost a 20-year-old movie, and that movie's so good.
So beautiful.
Gorgeous. Anyway, WALL-E. WALL-E, so
the cinematography, like, if we're gonna transition from The Fall, we need to talk the cinematography. The opening 30 minutes of WALL-E with like the endless vistas and it's just like the and the soundtrack is amazing.
Yeah, Thomas Newman does the soundtrack here, and like you're right, the camera work in this movie is like really unique for a Pixar movie. It's like, you get rack focuses, you get like shaky cam, you get things like that. Like they're
you get a
trying
lot
to
of long distance shots.
Yeah, like things that are a specific pain in the ass to animate, and they went to the trouble to animate these things that like you may not even notice.
And it does an incredible job of conveying not only the state of the planet, not only how desolate it is, not only how alone WALL-E is doing all of this, but also just how big and expansive it is if you're the only person.
Yeah.
If you're the only thing with a conscience, a mind.
Yeah.
Thoughts.
Whatever kind that WALL-E does. It's also crucial that WALL-E is not like broken down or miserable. Like WALL-E is not an unhappy being. Like he's going about his life and like finding his purpose and living to the best of his ability, because this is all he knows. So we're not finding him like wallowing and wishing for something else. He gets introduced to this whole exciting new world, and really at the crux of it, WALL-E is a love story, which is still such a cute and successful element of this movie, because he meets Eve, which is a very high-tech, very sleek robot that comes in on a spaceship basically to survey Earth and see if there's any inhabitable life on the planet so that the people can come back. And I love the design of Eve. This is peak like iPhone era, you know? So this is definitely kind of like an Apple influenced design where you're not supposed to see any seams. Everything's kind of white and smooth.
Especially considering the heritage of Pixar.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We should. I always love telling this story. Pixar only exists because of Howard the Duck. Because George Lucas owned Pixar. He owned this studio, and when his movie Howard the Duck came out in 1986 and was a massive commercial and critical bomb, he had to sell some assets. So he sold Pixar to Steve Jobs, who then developed Toy Story, who then, and then all the rest is history from there. But yeah, Howard the Duck is responsible for all of Pixar.
Yeah, no, it's super crazy, but the sound effects whenever Wall-E hits full charge is the sound of a Mac powering on.
Yeah, of course.
There's just I think it's impossible to talk about this movie and talk about all the good details, because it's every shot, every scene, it's like, oh, I like this camera angle, I like the way that we're seeing this. I like there's just so many different things happening.
And that was always kind of the Pixar difference. You know, if you're talking about the difference between a Pixar and a DreamWorks movie, which are kind of the two big competitors of the time, Pixar is not as concerned about like celebrities. Like DreamWorks will pack famous people into their movies, and it'll usually be like very quick-witted, and it'll be aimed at more like adults and kids, you know. And Pixar, like, they will absolutely make the lead of their movie Ben Burt, sound designer for Star Wars, or Craig T. Nelson for Incredibles, or like they're not interested in casting huge celebrities. They're interested in the best possible story and just so much attention to detail.
Yeah, they're so good at making things seem so exceptionally full. Yeah, while never pulling your attention to that effect.
No.
To that fact. It feels, like you said, there's such good attention to detail. There's so many details that every shot, every scene tends to feel like it should, because it is. There are shots of Wall-E rolling around, and there's like, newspapers and signs that he's just rolling over, and you're not mentioning it, you're not looking at it.
No.
But it's all there if you want to. And the design of Wall-E's home is incredible.
Absolutely.
I love the amount of details,
because you get that great moment where like he's rotating through all of his shelves of knickknacks and everything, and then at the end of the evening he crawls into that shelf, and then you realize, oh shit, this is where all of the other Wallies are supposed to be dispensed from, but none of them are left. So he's filled it all up with like knickknacks and little memorabilia. Like, again, just really elegant visual story. I think one of the best examples of how elegant this visual storytelling is comes in the later half of the movie, where Eve piles towels on Wall-E's head to keep him hidden behind a towel rack. And that could just be like a little one-off joke. But instead, he follows her. He looks in a garbage chute, and when he turns his head up, the towels fall down so we can see how deep the shaft is. Like, it's just one of those little things to me that like always stands out as a detail that helps shorten
like
that gap.
Detail storytellers.
Yeah.
Well, and so this movie is heavy on chases.
Yeah.
But they always establish the geography before the chase.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So like when he's chasing Eva on the spaceship, we've already know the established geography of his world. Later on the ship, when they're racing through the ship numerous different times, we know basically what's going on in the ship and where they're going. Like,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's again, there's so many, even when we transition to the ship, there's so many big establishing shots, and then it like the camera just kind of like jiggles a little bit and then zooms in on, Wall-E screaming through as fast as he can, trying to catch up to something.
Yeah.
They just do, Oh, so good.
Well, and let's talk about the captain, because like I think it's interesting that they try to show like 700 years have passed.
Yeah.
And it's just it's interesting, the progression in the captain photos, and to our current captain, who gets to wear a little cape.
Yeah, he does. He gets I think all captains should get to wear a little cape at some point in life. Yeah, the captain here is played by Jeff Garlin, and he's probably the character with the most dialogue in the movie. I mean, not probably. He's definitely the character with the most dialogue in the movie. Even though I don't think we ever get... Do we get his name? Do we say his... I don't remember if they say captain or something. I think they say it at some point.
I think it's on the picture.
Yeah, I definitely think it's around. I think it's just one of those things that we've so lost in all the details.
But that's kind of the big sort of second act reveal that was hidden in a lot of the promotional material of this at the time. It's like Wally hitchhikes on the ship to like protect Eva. Eva finds the plant that she needs. She finds that Earth can't sustain plant life, and so she gets summoned back as a probe. And Wally tags along, and he gets to find the Axiom, which is this big ship where all of the humans are still living. And contrary to kind of the post-apocalyptic vibes of the early part of this movie, the humans are fine. The humans are thriving. Like, society is still working, but they've all become so automated, and they've like just gotten used to living in these chairs that they've all become very large and sort of obsessed with their screens.
Yeah,
you know?
I have to point out, when I saw this movie for the first time, I didn't know about the second half of the movie.
Yeah.
I just assumed this was a movie. When we started watching it, I was like, okay, this is a movie with no people. This is just Wally, and maybe he meets somebody on the planet or something.
Yeah.
And then like they came from space, and I was like, oh, okay, this is neat.
Yeah.
We're gonna see their adventures, and then they went on an adventure. And I was like, oh,
Absolutely.
I wasn't expecting people.
I remember seeing this back in 2008. I was dating a woman who had a young daughter, and I brought her to this movie, and she was delighted by it. Like, she was never bored by the silent bits at the beginning, or the largely silent bits at the beginning. But I still vividly remember going into the lobby afterwards, and this woman was like whining to the management of the theater, saying like, oh, the whole first half of this movie was just a little guy saying, Eva, Eva, Wally, Wally, Eva, Eva. I'm like, all right. I don't know what you want them to do about it. Also, you're missing the whimsy of this movie. Like, you need them to be chattering at you all the time. Like, you know, stick with it. Let's see it out. It's going places. It's doing something.
I just want to point out that the captain's name is Captain B. McCrea. McCree. Yeah, spelled McCrea.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Either way, they don't say it out loud in there. They just call him the captain. And the captain is being influenced by the autopilot, just called Otto, which is cleverly designed. Yeah.
He looks like Hal.
He looks like Hal in the middle of like a ship's wheel, like in the middle of a tiller. You know, like
who had what? 2001: Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick.
But
Yeah.
what production?
Like
who would own the rights
Warner
to
Brothers.
Hal?
Warner Brothers would, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a nod without being an explicit reference.
Yeah, I wasn't
but
sure if that was one of those situations where, because of companies being acquired over the years, where they technically had the rights, or if it was just so heavily influenced.
Homage. It wasn't.
It was an homage.
Yeah.
It's hard to copyright a red light. You know. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to narrow that one down in particular.
And they didn't do the quiet of Hal voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Daisy,
Instead, it even says it lists as the cast the Apple Macintosh text-to-speak program is as the voice of Otto.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
They put it in the cast list in Wikipedia.
I love when they do that. I forget, there's a movie that gives like prominent billing to Siri. I forget. It's like a fairly recent movie that gets prominent.
I think I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget who that is, but yeah, it's an interesting thing they can do. You know, so I think, you know, the first half of the movie, as we said, it just feels a little more successful than the second half, because the satire is there, and I understand what they're going for, but it does feel a tiny bit mean-spirited, even if none of the characters are shown to be like useless or lazy or anything like that. The human characters that we get to know are strong and ambitious and like want to do something. Their bodies have just kind of degraded.
It definitely shows something that I think has been a common trend and a common thing in sci-fi forever.
Yeah.
Which is an over reliance on technology.
Yeah.
Because they're in Fahrenheit 451 had the TV walls. In this case, they just have screens being projected directly in front of their faces with the news and everything that they need, so they don't have to, you know, go to a screen or anything. Their chair has it built in, and their chair hovers around.
It's kind of like a fulfilling like capitalist fantasy because like nobody's actually working. Like it is almost more socialism than anything else. Like everybody's just kind of like automated on everything. If they want something, they get it. If they want food, it's provided for them. If they want to change the color of their clothes, they can do that immediately. And like they're just kind of talking to each other all the time. But they've grown very comfortable.
That was something that I was curious about because in the announcements and advertisements, they refer to the people as fellow by and large shoppers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, does it count as shopping?
Yeah, that's the thing.
What is the currency system here? And obviously, they don't really go into that much.
No,
but
they don't really have
it raises a lot of questions about, like, I wonder what this life really is like.
Yeah.
They don't seem to not like it. They're
But
not
again,
being held hostage.
As I said, all of the satire stuff is there, and it's pretty good. But like the really the crux of this is that this is a love story,
Yes.
and we get a lot of really beautiful moments. I will always just treasure the moment of like Eve and Wally like playing around in space and like dancing with the fire extinguisher. Wally like putting his hand through the rings of Saturn and like knocking the ice like out into a little spiral. Like there's some truly beautiful. We watched it together like on a 4K like restoration that looked really.
It looked really good.
It looked gorgeous for a 15-year-old movie. This is definitely held up.
Again 2008. It looks fantastic.
It really does.
Especially the space shots. You are like, oh, this is sick.
It is.
This is why you get this TV.
Exactly.
Even though it's 2023 and now we all, for the most part, have these TVs.
Yeah, technically.
It's hard to buy a TV for a living room that isn't 4K.
Yeah.
But it absolutely is still to this day a wonderful example of great imagery. In a movie. Great animation, great effects.
No, and it's ultimately just a really sweet and hopeful story. You know, like Otto, I guess, is the closest thing we have to a villain in this movie, and even then, he's just a robot. He can't really be blamed. But once we do get on the ship, we get so many little supporting robot characters. Mo, the little cleaning robot, is probably the standout.
Mo's great.
Come on, he's just like constantly like scrubbing and like. He's a little obsessive, but he's also going on his own little journey. He's learning to step outside the lines and like follow his passion, and like there's a lot of fun stuff there. Like, and it is just amazing how much character you get out of these little robots who have a very limited vocabulary.
Yes.
And just so much personality and character shines through.
The team, because I'm assuming it was a few people that were behind that, they deserve everything.
Oh yeah, all the robots.
Yeah, the character design people at Pixar are exceptional.
From character to sound, everybody who touched them did such an incredible job.
Yeah, no, they absolutely did. I don't know. It's just such an endlessly beguiling, heartwarming movie. I've probably seen this movie 10 times at this point, and I'm so charmed by it every time.
It's so lovely how Eve, or Eva, as Wally says, like definitely like changes and grows in her feelings for Wally, and like to the point where she almost put down her directive.
Yeah.
And Wally's like, no, your directive, Earth.
Well, I mean, she did.
Yeah.
And then he was like, no, you have to do it.
I need to get back to Earth. That's where my spare parts are.
Yeah.
I guess that too.
And we get cute little moments too where like, I don't know, like it feels silly to comment on this in regards to robots at all, but like this movie is not bound by any kind of gender binary in any way. Like she is clearly designed to be kind of more feminine, but she's also the stronger character. There's a very cute moment where his fire extinguisher gives out, and she just picks him up like he's a damsel in distress, and like he cuddles into her, and like she flies him back.
He's much smaller than her, and I really like that. Like that just made me happy.
He's a short king. Yeah,
he's a short king.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just I love every time Wally went into a box to hide.
Oh yeah.
I was like, this is great. Whether it's hiding from her, hiding from anybody else, he's such a little mischievous rascal in a more innocent way than any other rascal, where he's just like so curious and pure, trying to do things.
I feel a lot of his character design harkens not just from Short Circuit and Johnny Five, but also from E.T.
There's a lot of E.T.
And the elongating and shortening of the neck and the way his head swivels.
The big eyes, yeah. You know, and he's always low status, you know, because essentially he is just a trash compactor with feet. Like at the end of the day, that's what Wally is. So he's always low status, and we're always kind of rooting for him. But he's very guileless, and he's just very friendly to everybody. Like, he's curious about everybody. He wants to shake everybody's hand. Like, he teaches that one little robot how to wave, and then he becomes obsessed with it. Like, you know, like he just kind of quietly, positively impacts everybody he touches just by being himself. Yeah, and that's very sweet.
Like at one point, he accidentally. There's a secondary love story to the primary one, which is where Wally accidentally sets two people up.
Yeah, he's a little matchmaker.
Over time by like bumping into them and like changing them or like giving them a wider range of thought than they had before. Yeah. Until eventually they meet together and like, oh, this is great. But yeah, Wally accidentally knocks the dude out of his chair, and Wally very easily could have been like, I'm a robot, peace. Yeah. I'm trying to find my person that I'm chasing down. He's like, real quick, let me just lift you back up in there. Kind of, bye.
Yeah.
I'm Wally.
He's a sweet, helpful boy, and everybody's excited to talk to him, you know? Like, there's just kind of such a nice energy to the whole movie. Like, even when we get to the climax, like, where it's a little more action heavy, it still never feels like it's never super chaotic, you know, and the goals are always very clear and simple, you know, and we know what everybody wants. You know, it's just really elegant, simple storytelling, and it works.
Yes, they're clear without being too consistently simple, in the sense of like, there's so many movies that'll have somebody say like, we got to do the thing because of this, and that. They're like, it's clear, right? You already know why they're doing the things. If they need to really say much, it doesn't feel like you have, like, I always consider it as like the scientist, which is literally just there to tell you why this movie mattered, right? What's happening in this movie's happening.
Yeah, all the exposition is just kind of in the background. Like, you don't need to worry about it, you know? Yeah. No, it works for me. It just works so well, you know. Like, I would still give the slight edge for my Pixar movies to Ratatouille, just because I love the wit and the energy of that movie. But this is a movie that is so like universal. You could show this to somebody in any part of the world, and they would get right on board with it. You know, like you don't need to translate most of this movie, you know, and it's just got that kind of inclusiveness to it, and has a message without feeling like overwhelming with its message.
Yeah, it doesn't beat you over the head with anything.
Yeah, and it just all comes together. I don't know. I'm just always delighted to watch this movie. It's just one of my very favorite animated films.
It's a very chill, on a day like today. It was a great thing to just turn the lights off, kick back, watch Wall-E.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe we should transition to the game a little bit, because we do have some stuff to talk about with the game. The game came out day and date release, same as the movie. And now this was actually on PS3, 360, and some of the more recent consoles, but we played it on PS2 just because that happened to be the copy that I had. But I don't feel like this lost much by not being on like a next gen console.
No, the graphics were fantastic. The cutscenes were amazing.
Yeah. Now this, weirdly, the PS2 game actually has a lot more stages than the PS3 or 360 version. There's like 23 stages in this game versus 9 in the other versions. It could be because some of these stages are very, very brief when we were playing it, but so like I said, there's not a lot of tension with these Disney games to like, is this going to be like an embarrassingly bad game? Like, that's never really the case with these Disney games. There's a certain level of quality control where they're at least going to be passable.
I was doing some reading on it, and there's actually 4 different games by 4 different studios. And the one that we played, the PlayStation 2 version, is pretty much referred to be as the best one.
I would believe it. Yeah.
The
And
other
this is
ones,
a pretty late PS2 game. Like,
Yeah.
the next gen is already out for a couple of years at this point. So,
Yeah.
it's cool that they put this much effort into it. I think this does a really good job of complementing the game or the movie without being an exact one-to-one adaptation of the movie. Like, we're not playing the exact events of the film as they happened, but we are getting the vibe of it. This game is really kind of a puzzle platformer where your goal is to like collect a certain number of like blue cells to open up the gate to get to the next level. And sometimes that requires a little lateral thinking, including the thing that surprised me most about it, some kind of skateboarding mechanics.
That was great.
Not hinted at in the movie whatsoever, but it kind of makes sense. If you have a character that has built-in wheels, like, it kind of makes sense to have him race around or do things like that.
Do half pipes. There's so many half pipes.
They straight up introduce it as like, oh, Wally can do things on half pipes. And you're like, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are kind of reaching the tail end of when Disney was still adapting their properties into video games. Like, they weirdly gave up on that a lot sooner than a lot of other developers did. Like, Disney Interactive as a studio is going to be gone 7 or 8 years after this movie comes out. Or after this game comes out. But I still think there's a level of quality control here that is not always present in this game. I thought this game was pretty solid. Like, I was enjoying everything it was putting out.
Yeah, there was a lot of games that were very popular during that time period in really the PlayStation 2 generation.
Yeah.
That started to fall off a little bit, and now they're coming back a little bit. But it was like the Ratchet and Clanks, the Spy Coopers, the Jacks, like of just like platformers where it's a little on the chill side.
And it also was getting, like, if in those specific instances, it was getting a little darker. Like, Jak and Daxter 2 is like a weirdly dark and heavy
It's
game.
significantly darker than the first one.
You know, so like they were... I'm always fascinated by that era of video games because they were still trying to find like mascot characters to represent their system, but the audience was aging along with the medium, you know, so like they couldn't make it super kiddie and they had to kind of find ways. So like Jak and Daxter 2 turns into Grand Theft Auto for a little bit. It's weird.
I mean, that's good. I loved that game.
It's a good game.
I was like, this is
it remains a good game, but but
it was all of it. Yeah, it was an interesting time where it was like, just a lot of games like not exactly like this, but this was a significantly more chill one because. And I read ahead, supposedly the game starts to follow the story of the movie a little bit as it goes on.
It does, yeah.
But
like the training level of this gives us a peek at Wall-E life 700 years before the beginning of this movie. So we were talking about like how old Wall-E might be and how long he's been alone and things like that, you know, and speculating. And this says like he's been at this for at least 700 years.
Yeah.
And he's been Wall-E at least all this time, if the game's to be believed.
And he's been collecting artifacts and doing little cute dances.
Okay,
this is
one of the best things about this game. Like almost every game you play, especially in this era, is going to have little collectible thingies that you can go around and look for hidden throughout the level. But this one is kind of unique because every time you find a little hidden artifact, you get like a 30-second to 1 minute like Wall-E bit. Like you find an umbrella and he does a little Fred Astaire dance number for a bit. Like he's always doing some kind of like physical comedy interacting with the item that you've found, which gives you much more incentive to track these things down than to just like, just be a completist and find everything.
Just like in the movie, he puts it in his lunchbox and gets back to work.
Exactly.
we found a plunger and that was great. I immediately was like, oh, go for the face. And then it just cuts to him like with a first person perspective of the plunger getting closer and closer to the eyes. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted.
I'm not sure if it happens later. I would imagine it doesn't, but this is not a game with any combat.
Yeah.
You know, because that's not really the nature of this game. It is just going kind of more for a puzzle platforming area where you need to collect everything in a certain level before you can progress. And some of that takes a little lateral thinking. So like you need to find all the blue cells, and you need to do that by busting open this door with an explosive crate, and then you need to do a trick off the half pipe to get to this higher area.
Yeah.
So it's a nice blend of kind of reflex and logical thinking.
And it's like from the later, from what I can gather, is that as you start getting antagonists, it does that thing that kind of like there were a lot of games that would do that, like Spyro, stuff like that, where you would start to have sequences that were there's going to be one sequence that's different from the rest of the game. And there's going to be a few different sequences that are different of like, hey, now this one is a chase where you are just trying to chase the thing, stuff like that.
What I really like about it as a person who grew up in a big family is that it had a seamless like passing the controller from person to person. It was really easy to play this game in a cooperative manner versus like some other games which you're like no, you can't have the controller yet.
I've got some momentum here, but yeah, this one, you're right. This one is very segmented. It's kind of episodic in that way. But, I was never bored, and I found myself wanting to go back and play the rest of this. Like, I feel like I can beat this game pretty reasonably, but, like, it doesn't feel like it's insulting your intelligence. It's not aged down so much that, like, you can't enjoy it as an older person.
Yeah.
And as a person who is jump challenged, it was not bad.
No,
like,
you got on board. Like, this has some unique jumping mechanics, too, and you kind of got on board with that pretty easily. Like, he does a very small little jump, but it's not going to get you up on any platforms without the help of some ramps. And you have a little meter indicating your momentum. So you need to pay attention to how fast you're going and how much momentum you have going into these jumps. So there is a little bit of trial and error to it, but I think we all got on board with it pretty quickly.
I think the only thing that was at times difficult was just the camera controls, the camera angles that were available to you. Definitely not the worst I'd ever seen, but there were a few times where, like, if you're up against a wall or something, the camera might move in a way and you'd be a little disoriented from it. But definitely not something that I would say the game struggled with.
No.
I think that might just be, like, the biggest negative, and it wasn't big. It was a pretty minor irritation, annoyance, as opposed to it being something that actually like plagues the game and makes it difficult. Like some games throughout the PlayStation 2 era, as they were figuring things out, dealt with.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have a lot of sample exclusives for PS2 era games for the show, but like the ones we played have been pretty good. Like including the Polar Express game, shockingly, was like kind of better than the movie. Scarface was pretty good. Like there were some good games in this era.
Yeah. Oh man.
So maybe this is kind of the sweet spot for our show of like when they're still putting a little bit of energy to it. Before they've sort of give up.
Before the games industry became as much of a corporate hellscape as it is currently.
A little bit.
Yeah.
No, but Wall-E, the video game, is kind of a soft recommend for me. Like, I think this is a very enjoyable little game. I think this is something you can play all ages and have a good time with it. And it's not going to take up so much of your time that you're going to feel overburdened. And it provides just the right level of challenge for you to feel like you made it worth your while.
I think a good representation of this was in my quick searching, I had found a Reddit post. And it was somebody posting to the PlayStation 2 Reddit less than a year ago saying that they found a copy for $2 at Goodwill and had a great time. Yeah. They said it genuinely reminded them of the games that they enjoyed when they had played during the PlayStation 2 era.
Absolutely.
And they were like, hey, if you see it hanging around, it's worth picking up.
No, I would second that. Do we have any final thoughts about Wall-E before we move on to our rankings?
I feel like I have a lot of thoughts, but I think I'm good.
I might be listening to the soundtrack on the way home. I'm really like, as a person who likes to score live theater, like I really feel like I've slept on the Wall-E soundtrack.
I really like it. It feels very distinctive, and like I really like that Peter Gabriel song in the end credits too. Like I think that one's slept on a little bit too.
What's the style of music? Because I don't know when they get to the ship, to the Axiom, and the kind of the plucky guitar.
I know what you're thinking. Like, I don't know what they call it, but there is a nice blend of kind of technological sounds and natural, like acoustic sounds,
Yeah.
or orchestral sounds. Like it's not full techno, it's not like full bleeps and bloops, but there's enough of a bleep and bloop kind of factor to make it feel futuristic and about robots, you know. So yeah, very nice score by Thomas Newman. Well, let's move on to our rankings. Is this a good game, good movie, bad game, bad movie, or somewhere in between? I'm going to say good on both. I liked both of these. I think this movie is wonderful. It's endlessly watchable.
Staccato is the term I think I was looking for.
Okay, all right.
Where it's just like quick guitar notes, quick like acoustic little guitar notes, and it was just such a fun variance in the soundtrack. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely. I'm going to say good movie, good game for both of these.
I'm going to say good movie, fun game. I don't feel like I've played it enough to actually be like good, but
Sure.
but I was on the edge of my seat because I really wanted to get to the next level. So I feel like that's making me lean towards good.
I feel like it's compelling enough that you wanted to keep playing. I think that's
it's
good.
definitely compelling enough that I wanted to keep playing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say because I don't do this one very often. Fantastic movie. I loved this movie.
Love to
Both
hear it.
times I watched it. I think it got better the second time.
Hell yeah.
Which is hard considering where it was the first time. And it was a pretty good game.
Yeah.
If you like to, it has like the right balance of collecting stuff and the gameplay plays well.
Yeah.
So it's not super clunky.
Better incentive for collecting stuff than most games offer. Like you get Wally, you get
Absolutely.
original Wally bits. That's a great incentive.
Absolutely. And you can fire Wally's laser at stuff.
You
We
sure
didn't even
can.
mention the laser. It's pretty good. It's a good time.
He's got a little death ray, and he doesn't get to use it very much in the movie.
He uses it once to make the love thing. I think that's his main use, and then I think he lasers like a restriction of some kind off one of the robots.
Yeah.
But
Very, very cute. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and thank you guys for rolling with the schedule change. We were planning on coming in to record a different episode, which you would have already heard at this point, but things got a little reconfigured, so we kind of got together and watched the movie and
the
played
new
the game
year.
all at
It
once.
works.
So, but it wound up being pretty fun, I thought.
yeah.
Next week, so I told you guys beforehand that we have an episode next week that you will never guess. If you were given a million guesses, you will never guess what it is. So I'm finally going to reveal
Mary
what we're watching and
Poppins.
playing next week.
The Sound of Music.
Oh, you're nowhere close.
Is this going to be a movie that we've heard of before?
Probably not.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
In good, there's good. Maybe J-Band's
Okay.
heard of this in passing, but like I doubt you know what this movie is at all. This is a 2003 movie called The Recruit, starring Al Pacino and Colin Farrell. A totally forgotten
I think I've seen
espionage
this movie.
Have you seen it?
I think so.
I have never seen it. It has a video game based on it unofficially. Okay, the game is called Ice 9. It was based exactly on The Recruit, and then they lost the license. But the game that they released still includes character names and like follows the same plot of the movie. So I'm counting it.
So they just changed the name and we're like,
They just changed the name and the title, like, and the character.
we didn't have the
names, I
rights
think.
to Al Pacino's face anyway.
Yeah. So it's going to be very unique to talk about for those reasons. Also because it's a first-person shooter on the Game Boy. So it's going to be our Game Boy Advance, excuse me. So it's going to be an interesting and weird one. I've been curious to get to this one. I've
What
never
was the
seen this
game called
movie.
again?
It's called Ice 9.
Ice 9.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
Okay.
yeah, so we're going to be going real deep and real weird on this one. I think this is going to have a lot of people scratching their heads, including us. But hey, we'll see. Maybe this is a hidden gem. We have no idea. So thank you, everyone, for listening. As always, you can find us at cinemarcadepodcast@gmail.com. Send us a letter. We'd love to get one. Follow us on our social media. Check out my other show. It's called Puppet Masters Castle Freaks. I talk about horror movies there all the time. That's a lot of fun. And in the meantime, we will see you next week for The Recruit / Ice 9. Wally.
Happy New Year.
Meep, moop, moop, moop.
Eva.